This video is sponsored by Tabletop Stronghold. I've been painting up every single Ork Clan and culture so that I can collect them all like Pokemon, and the one I want to focus on today are the Death Skulls, the gun-loving thieves of the Ork species. This is one that I haven't delved too much into in my Ork collecting. These are the Orks who love the gun. They love big, loud noises and the color blue. Cracking into the old new Ork Boy kit, I looked around for an Ork that felt like he wouldn't mind stealing some good loot. The Death Skulls have members in all Ork units, although they prefer to kill their foes in less destructive ways, so that they can more easily salvage the remains to add to their hordes of loot. This Ork with a slug and choppa felt right. The only problem with these push-fit models are the occasional unsightly seam. This guy has one running right over his back that I'll have to fix. I took some Tamiya putty and I smeared this into the gap, filling in the rut and letting it sit a little bit proud on his shoulders. Tamiya putty can be thin with plastic glue, and I ran the bristles of the applicator over the edges to soften them and blend them into the sculpt. Once that was dry, I took a sanding twig and I ran this over the putty, making it all perfectly smooth. And you know what else is perfectly smooth? This transition to today's sponsor, Tabletop Stronghold. Tabletop Stronghold is a one-man band based out of the mountainous state of West Virginia, which I hear is almost heaven. And mountains are extra appropriate for the absolute mountain of hobby goodies available from Tabletop Stronghold. The Mag Case 2.0 is a dapper, durable, dependable carrying case for holding and transporting your entire tabletop army. With a clear plastic front that lets you see your prized collection, slim metal trays with included 3x2mm magnets, and 24 available slots, you'll have everything you need to transport your collection. And with the power of magnets, you won't have to worry if your models be in one piece when they arrive. These cases also come in 3 sizes: the Mag Case Mini, which is great for small armies, spearheads, and kill teams, the standard Mag Case 2.0 for your armies and big models, and the Mag Case Extra Large for your massive hordes of minis. No matter the size of your army, Tabletop Stronghold has you covered. Tabletop Stronghold can also do more than just transport your minis to and from the game. With the Tabletop Stronghold Competitive Terrain Set 2.0, you can have a tournament-level table set up in minutes. All of this also includes free shipping to the USA, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and most of the EU, which is a fantastic deal for great cases and terrain. If you're looking to get a great case to transport your models with the power of magnets, or an absolute table's worth of terrain, then Tabletop Stronghold has got you covered. If you shop with the code EONS25, you'll get 25% off. You can find them linked in the description below. Next up, drilling the barrel of this slugga. I never managed to get the hole dead center, but for orcs, I feel like that's fine. I started with a 1mm bit, and then I worked up to larger sizes. Once I was happy with the size of the hole, which ended up being hilariously large, this guy is shooting Coke cans out of his pistol, I then took this reamer bit for a Dremel tool. I haven't actually used this for its intended purpose, but it's really good at deburring holes in plastic minis, and I gave it a little spin to perfect it. Now that I've got my boy, it's time to give him some loot. Looking through my bits, I found this splinter rifle from the Dark Eldar. Some of the Drukhari vehicles come with loose guns, which are fantastic for kit bashing. This will make a fine addition to my Death Skulls collection. And looking further, I found this Deathcore Krieg lasgun. This was meant to attach to a Krieger's backpack. I mixed up a little bit of green stuff, and I got to work attaching these bits to my orcs. The green stuff will help me make a good connection, and I stacked these two weapons one on top of another. Right now they're just floating there, and I need to come up with a way for them to be believably stuck down to his back, so I'm gonna try twine. I cut off a small length of this and I tucked one end under his rifle. Then I twisted it around them a couple of times, adding more glue to keep them in place. Then I cut a second length and I wrapped it around my orc, shoving the end into the bundle. This stuff is a bit fibrous, but it looks the part, and I dripped some ultra thin super glue into it and it soaked right in, making the twine hard like resin. Overall, I'm really happy with this, and I think I'll be using it on some more orcs. It's pretty easy to do. Now to base my boy. I sunk a magnet into a 32mm cobalt keep magnet base and I got to work decorating. Orcs always look good on a barren desert base, and to make the rocks, I took some small pieces of 1/4 inch cork and I glued these down, leaving plenty of room for my boy's feet to stand. Then I tore up the edges of the cork with my fingers. Now I want these spots to look like soft, windswept rocky outcroppings, so I took some wood filler putty and I smeared this all over the cork, using my fingers to squish the putty into the texture. Then I took a wet paper towel and I wiped off more of the putty, only leaving it behind in the deepest recesses. This hides the cork and makes it look more natural. Now my rocks are looking good, it's time for some texture. I took some sandy texture paste and I smeared this all over the ground. I find putting this on thick, smearing it around, and then pulling off the excess works best. Then I take a clean wet brush and I dab at the wet putty, removing any brush strokes and making the sand look natural. While it's still wet, I want to attach my boy. I drilled a 1mm hole up into his leg and I inserted the length of brass rod. Then I picked a spot and I drilled a matching hole into the base and I stuck down my orc. I almost always pin my models. It's a pet peeve of mine when the model's foot is really submerged in the basing material instead of standing on top of it, so I like to add my model last. My Death Skull is coming along nicely with the looted weapon standing in for the Shuda, and the thing of the Death Skulls is guns, and the Ork range has a ton of very big, weird, wacky guns, but it's kind of hard to get excited about the really big Ork guns because a low number of really good attacks hitting on 5s and 6s is not super exciting. I I feel like the best gun that the orcs have is probably the lowly Luta. Lootas are hilarious because they carry the Def Gun, and the Def Gun is crazy. It is 2 shots plus 1 for rapid fire at 24 inches, strength 8, AP -1, damage 2. That's a crazy profile that's almost free. 5 Lootas cost 50 points, and then 10 Lootas is 100 points. They're so incredibly cheap, and they really do shoot incredibly hard. Now they're only hitting on 6s. It can be 5 if they manage to hold still with heavy, but it's probably gonna be 6s. But even with just 6s, and the possibility of re-rolling those hits, because if they're shooting at something on an objective, they get to re-roll the attack, that can do some serious work. And for so cheap, like 2 squads of Lootas is 200 points, all of that just parked 24 inches away from an objective, and then if anything comes near, it gets shot with a preposterous number of really good attacks. I mean, Space Marines do not want to get hit with 60 attacks at strength 8, AP -1, damage 2. I was rereading the Ork Codex to see if there's any ways to juice the Luta profile, and there's a couple of ways with detachments and stratagems and enhancements, but honestly, I feel like keeping them cheap and cheerful is the way to go. Like 2 squads of Lootas is just really, really nice. Keeping them in your backfield, kind of making sure that deep strikers aren't getting back there while just throwing out an absurd number of attacks. I feel like you might as well Overwatch with them because they naturally hit on 6s anyway, so it's just an extra phase of shooting. The Lootas look like a lot of fun. I don't have any in my army, but I think I'm gonna need to change that in the near future because Lootas seem pretty darn good. My little Death Skull's ready to bring some loot back to sell to the Lootas, and I never really see people paint their orcs as Death Skulls, probably because blue and green don't work phenomenally together, but a traditional Death Skulls paint job is actually really interesting. I primed my little Death Skull in white and then got to work filling in all of his parts with color, starting with some brownish decay sprayed from underneath. This is kind of like a Zenithal, but over the white, everything remains really bright, where a classic Zenithal skews dark. This ugly brown color should get me started on covering his bits and shades of brown. I took Satchel Brown and I put this over his pants. I don't think I shook the bottle hard enough and it ended up being a little patchy, but that's okay. I'm planning on doing some dry brushing later. Next up, hardened leather for his shirt. I'm working quickly and carefully, giving the speed paint time to be wet and settle on the model while avoiding the parts I haven't touched yet. Next up, Noble Skin. This is one of my all-time favorite colors. It's black with a little bit of brown in it, and it looks so good over metal. I hit on all of his armor, guns, belts, and the boots. Now I have a lot of this color down, it's time to clean him up a little. I took some fur brown onto a dry brush and I rubbed this over his legs and the wristbands to bring out the wrinkles in the fabric and to smooth out the speed paint. Then for the black parts, I took ash gray and I dry brushed this all over the Noble Skin to edge highlight everything. For those looted weapons, I'm thinking Grim Black. If I was doing a Death Skulls army, I would want a bunch of looted stuff, but I wouldn't want to have tons of different random colors everywhere in my army, so I think a simple black wash and then a silver dry brushing later will make these things look good without being too distracting. Now that's all my orc clothing and stuff painted, it's time to orcify him. Starting with Familiar Pink. This is an undershading that I really like doing for orc skin. Green over top of this does all sorts of interesting things, and in one coat it paints his tongue, teeth, and lips. And speaking of that green, I chose Shamrock Green. This is an extremely vibrant green color, and over the pink it turns very dark. I put this all over his flesh quickly, and then came in with a clean brush while the paint was still wet, and I pushed and pulled it off the highest spots like the forehead and shoulders. With the green skin taken care of, I could really take this orc anywhere in terms of which clan he's a member of. This is your bog standard orc boy. Not quite a Death Skull yet. The last time I painted up some Death Skulls, I was doing it for my Helbrecht's base. Hi Marshal Helbrecht, and these are actually Nick's orcs. Nick paints his orcs blue with orange weapons. I'm not sure if they're meant to be Death Skulls, but they definitely have a Death Skulls-y feel. And I wanted to have this guy all painted up so that now I can make some executive decisions on what exactly is going to turn blue. I started out with Arctic Gem as the base of this blue paint. The Death Skulls believe that the color blue brings good luck and pleases their gods Gork and Mork, so they paint themselves and their weapons in this color. I took my blue onto a piece of sponge and I started stamping this on, hitting their face, shoulders, armor, and weapons. I'm not going for full coverage, just getting it down messily on the model. After that, I took some more Arctic Gem onto a paintbrush and I started filling in between some of the random stamping, especially around the face and the surface of the weapons, letting the stamped parts be the messy edges of the paint job within a paint job. I chose this brighter blue to help cut through the colors, and now I want a darker, more saturated blue, crystal blue. I took this onto a brush and I painted this over the Arctic blue, letting the lighter color show through on all the edges of the details. After this coat, I mixed a little bit of crystal blue and Arctic Gem together for a slightly lighter blue, and I painted this on the highlights and the muscles. I like to think this orc started his day dunking his head and shoulders in a bucket of blue paint. Then he let his Gretchen paint on his death skull. I took ash gray and I started painting the skull over his face. I made a nice round circle encompassing his forehead and eyes, and under his nose I made 3 little pointed teeth to compare to the orc skull. Once I was happy with the mask, I took white paint and I started highlighting. This white paint doesn't cover great, so I can use layering to create some highlights and shadows, making the edges of his skull face and his temples brighter white while the wrinkles of his brow still gray. After some more fussing, I had his face paint looking pretty good, and I hit his eyes with some dots of red paint. Then for his teeth, I painted these with Baron Dune, because I accidentally spilled a little bit of green speed paint into his teeth, so this is just to clean him up. That's most of my painting done. Time for the special effects, starting with metallics. I took 2 thin coats of plate armor and I dry brushed this all over the metal. This gave all the edges a nice shine. He is looking good now, but he's too clean. Nothing a little dirty down rust won't fix. I took this and shoved it into all the recesses of the armor, then left it alone to dry. The nice thing about Dirty Down is it's water soluble, so once it was dry I came back in with a clean wet paintbrush and I edited the rust, making some of the transitions softer and wiping it off those high spots where it shouldn't be. That's my death skull all done, it's time to tackle the base. For the ground, I think Pallid Bone will give me a very dead barren desert. I put this all over, and then for the highlights I took Baron Dune and I dry brushed this over the ground to bring out some of the texture of the sand in my little rocks. As a final touch, I dry brushed some bony spike over the sand lightly to bring out some high spots and make the texture more exaggerated. That's my color. Now for a little bit more texture. I took some 2mm tiny beige tufts and I stuck these down. I find picking them up with tweezers, dipping them in a drop of thick super glue, and then squishing them down on the base works best. Also, these tufts are available at EonsOfBattle.com. On EonsOfBattle.com, we are all restocked on our excellent hobby goodies: Gamer Grass Tufts, Great Height Studio Bits for your Space Marines, Army Painter paints, brushes, base and cork, ultra thin and ultra thick super glue, and we've got terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month, members get a credit good for any one terrain pack we've ever made, or the brand new one. New in May, we have created the Cyber City, a set of terrain perfect for any fast-paced war game. These beautiful gleaming buildings are the picture of future affluence, ready to be fought over and on top of. These pieces were designed to give plenty of line of sight blocking terrain, with lots of room on top for miniatures to stand on. And with a stacking system, you can build your boards up into the air with lots of catwalks and staircases to let you battle in the 3rd dimension. To sprinkle around the city are some sci-fi accessories like line of sight blocking hologram projectors, rooftop doors, computer terminals, crates, and snack machines. Everything a future battlefield needs. This terrain set was designed by us and is available at EonsOfBattle.com. With my grass tufts in place, I hit the base rim with a couple coats of gloss black paint, and my orc is ready to go steal something big and loud. Orc faces take really well to having a skull painted over them. It's a really cool look that would be a bit of a challenge to do across an entire army, but if it was just a couple of squads, say 2 10-man squads of Lootas, that would be pretty cool. I actually found one of Nick's old Lootas, and boy are they old. I like Lootas a lot, I like the big def gun contraptions, but this is just a little tiny guy. This is not up to the snuff of some modern Warhammer 40,000. Now, I might be looking into it a little bit too much, but when I checked today, Lootas were not on the Games Workshop web store. Now, this could mean nothing, but it could mean with 11th edition right around the corner and new orcs, it could mean we're gonna get some new Lootas in the near future. Some new Lootas that I could paint skull faces on and have them look really cool. I don't know, I'll have to wait and see what happens. But what I do know is the death skulls are pretty darn cool. They are the thieving orcs. If you want an army that consists of a whole bunch of looted vehicles, like if you want a wave serpent, a chimera, and a rhino as your orc trucks, and you paint them all blue and send them out on the front lines, the death skulls are the way to go. Now that I've got a death skull, there's just a couple more orc cultures to do. And then of course there are little things in between the different orc cultures, like what does Tusk and the Demon Hunters look like after 10,000 years fighting in the warp? I don't know, but it's probably pretty wizard. Thanks for watching.